My name is Madeline Carter. I walked into that boardroom thinking I'd be pitching the future of Carter Industries, the AI system I built from the ground up. Instead, they handed me a folder to sign away my legacy. My father called it consolidation. I called it betrayal. But they didn't know I didn't walk away with nothing. I walked away with the blueprint for something greater. If you've ever been cut out of your own work, your own worth, stay. This story is for you. The elevator chimed as it reached the 17th floor, the number flickering like a nervous heartbeat. I adjusted my blazer and exhaled. Monday, May 3rd, 2021. I had rehearsed this presentation in my head 100 times, right down to how I'd respond when Charles, my father, inevitably interrupted. The future of Carter Industries rested in this automation proposal, and I had written every damn word of it. The hallway outside the conference room was eerily quiet. No assistants typing, no echo of clinking mugs, just the quiet hum of fluorescent lights and the soft thud of my heels on the polished floor. It was almost surgical in its sterility, like the company itself had braced for an operation. As I reached for the chrome handle, my fingers hesitated. For a moment, I saw myself at 10 years old, waddling behind Grandpa into this very room. He had bent down, gray hair gleaming, and whispered, "One day you'll sit at the head of this table." I pushed the door open. Inside, the room was already full. Charles sat at the head, back straight, tailored navy suit immaculate. George Templeton, our family's attorney, sat to his right, icy and unreadable as ever. Brandon, my older brother and newly appointed COO, occupied the seat closest to me. His eyes didn't meet mine. There was no projector, no water bottles, no copies of my report. Just a single leather folder placed in front of the empty chair across from Charles. Mine. I sat. "Thank you for coming, Madeline," Charles said, as if I'd had a choice. His tone was warm, almost congratulatory. That frightened me more than if he'd barked. "This isn't about the automation rollout?" I asked, gesturing to my satchel where 2 crisp copies of the proposal rested. I had even color-coded the appendices. Templeton slid the folder closer. "Please, open it." I did, and stopped breathing. Transfer of ownership agreement. 30% equity stake, my equity, marked for reassignment. Pre-filled. All it lacked was my signature. "Is this a joke?" I asked, eyes darting between the 3 men. Charles leaned forward. "This is about the longevity of Carter Industries. The market's unstable. We need clear leadership and consolidated direction." "You mean control," I spat. Templeton's voice was clinical. "Should you choose not to cooperate, the board is prepared to convene and remove you entirely. The grounds would be managerial incompetence." "Incompetence?" I laughed. "I'm the one who designed the AI refactoring system you're currently piloting." Brandon flinched, just slightly. Charles didn't blink. "You're talented, Madeline. But this isn't MIT. This is a legacy, a structure, a business, which I've helped build. You've made contributions, yes, but families sometimes must make sacrifices for the greater good." Sacrifices. That word lingered like rot in the air. For a second, I considered standing up, flipping the table, walking out. But Templeton's eyes locked onto mine, calculating, cold, already confident in the outcome. Brandon still hadn't looked at me. I signed. The pen felt heavy and my signature looked unfamiliar, as if my own hand resented me. "There, happy now?" I asked. Charles stood. "You might be good at MIT, but this is Carter Industries, not a group project." I clenched my jaw and walked out without another word. The air outside hit me like a slap. Hot, sharp, and humiliating. I reached the parking lot, barely aware of how I got there. The steel of my car door felt cool under my palm. I stared at my reflection in the window. Face calm, but eyes burning. I reached into my bag. The second copy of the automation proposal was still there. Untouched. My proof. My idea. I'd also kept my Carter Industries ID card, reflex, maybe hope. I slipped it back into my wallet, but it felt different now. Lighter, useless. My fingers hovered over my phone screen before pressing the contact labeled Ethan Vaughn. He picked up on the second ring. "Remember that offer?" I said, voice level. "I'm in." I didn't walk away with nothing. I walked away with everything they refused to see. The office smelled like paint thinner and ambition. Exposed brick walls, a secondhand whiteboard streaked with dry marker, and one fan that groaned more than it cooled. It wasn't Carter Industries, but it was real. Mine. Ethan leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, a paper coffee cup in one hand. "Not what you're used to, huh?" I laughed, stepping over a coil of Ethernet cable. "It's perfect." He tossed me a key with a grin. 50-50, partner. There it was. Recognition. Quiet, but whole. I gripped the key hard enough that it left an imprint in my palm. Ethan had believed in me from day one. Back at MIT, he was the postdoc who gave me my first real challenge, and my first glimpse of what innovation could do outside a classroom. He'd seen me when Carter Industries refused to. "If they don't see your potential," he told me once, "you're on the wrong stage." Now, we were building our own. We called it NovaTech. Our first week was chaos. Naomi Green, a quick-witted freelancer with a gift for numbers, set up the bookkeeping while teaching herself payroll software from scratch. Isaiah Brooks, a fresh grad who practically vibrated with ideas, spent hours scribbling diagrams and debugging our prototype's learning modules. My role? Everything else. Pitch decks, wiring prototypes, late-night code revisions. I didn't sleep much, but I didn't care. For once, I wasn't defending my place. I was designing it. The AI proposal Carter had dismissed now had its own second life. We refined the system's ability to optimize production flow in real time and trained its neural net to correct anomalies autonomously. When Ethan suggested pitching to manufacturing plants in the Midwest, I was already drafting an email. A week later, we secured a pilot contract with a factory in Michigan. Small batch, limited scale, but it was ours. 2 days after that, NovaTech landed in a side column on TechStream Weekly. A new player in industrial automation, it read, founded by a former Carter Industries exec. No one said my name outright, but those who knew would recognize the silhouette. Naomi spun her monitor around one evening. "You should see this," she said, biting her lower lip. Equinox Ventures, one of the top tech investment groups in the region, was looking into us. Naomi had spotted one of their analysts poking around LinkedIn, connecting with Isaiah, even browsing NovaTech's page. "Interest?" I asked. "Could be," she said. "Or damage control." I didn't need to ask from whom. That night, I stayed in the office long after Ethan and Naomi had left. I opened my inbox, reading through updates from the Michigan plant. Smooth integration. Efficiency gains already visible. Then a message from our contact at Brookline Systems, Carter's former partner. "Contract terminated with Carter Industries. We've moved forward with NovaTech." I sat back, stunned. Then slowly a smile cracked open. It wasn't just a win. It was a shift. A signal. The building was quiet, save for Isaiah's playlist echoing faintly from the hallway speaker. Ethan walked in, hoodie pulled over his head, 2 takeout bags in hand. "Chinese or Indian?" "Both," I muttered, still staring at the screen. He placed the food on my desk, glanced at the email, then looked at me. "Ready to make Carter regret everything?" I didn't answer. I just nodded. The office was brighter now. Or maybe I was. Sunlight poured across the polished floors of NovaTech's new headquarters, slicing through floor-to-ceiling glass that overlooked all of Chicago. The view was impossible to ignore. Cranes, towers, moving cars below. From here, I could see everything I used to think was out of reach. Naomi knocked lightly on the glass door to my office, tablet in hand. "You're going to want to hear this," she said. I turned from the window. They've been sitting in the lobby for over 80 minutes. No appointment, no calls. Just waiting. Who? I asked, though I already knew. Naomi gave a dry smile. Mr. Charles and Brandon Carter. For a moment, I said nothing. The silence hung like dust in sunlight. Then I nodded. Let them up. And get me the Carter Industries report. She arched an eyebrow. All of it? All of it. 10 minutes later, they walked in, no longer as towering figures from my past, but as two men weighed down by the collapse of their own empire. Charles's silver hair was neatly combed, but he looked smaller, stooped. His voice, once like gravel, now barely scratched the surface of authority. Brandon followed silently, thinner than I remembered, suit hanging off him like it didn't fit right anymore. Security had kept them waiting, per standard procedure. Naomi had made sure of that. Madeline, Charles began, still trying to keep control of the room. You'll speak when I'm ready, I interrupted. Please, sit. They sat. I handed them each a folder. Inside, 2 job descriptions. Entry-level operations manager. Modest pay, no executive perks, no corner office. Just a desk and a chance. Charles didn't even open it. This is a mistake, he said. I didn't come here to be insulted. I raised my chin, unblinking. You came here because Carter Industries declared bankruptcy 4 days ago. Because your name no longer opens doors. And because the only company you ever dismiss now owns the contracts you used to brag about over bourbon. Brandon opened the folder. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. His signature hit the page with quiet acceptance. Charles stood. I built Carter from the ground up. I don't take orders. I leaned back in my chair, folding my hands. That's too bad, because I'm not offering you a board seat. Just a desk, a badge, and a basic schedule. He hesitated. For the first time, truly hesitated. Naomi entered with the report. Precise, bullet-pointed. Carter's failed acquisitions, breach of contract lawsuits, dwindling IP. All the damage they caused. To themselves. Charles looked at me then. Really looked. Not as a daughter. Not as a woman who got lucky. As the only person who'd survived the fire they set. Are you ready to take orders from the daughter you silenced? I asked, quiet but firm. His mouth was dry. I have no choice. He signed. As they left, Brandon turned back once. Thank you, he murmured. No apology, but maybe the first true thing he'd said to me in years. Naomi re-entered. You were right not to throw away the ID card, she said, half a smile playing on her lips. I pulled it out from my desk drawer. Still intact. The nameplate worn, the barcode still readable. No emotion stirred. Naomi's voice cut the quiet. Equinox called. They want a meeting. I looked up. What's the issue? They're hesitant. Something about the Carter connection. Of course. Their downfall wasn't just personal. It cast a shadow over everything, including me. I closed the drawer slowly, the ID card inside. Set the meeting, I said. Let's remind them who owns the light now. I built a system that learns from mistakes. My father became the first lesson. The room hummed with quiet efficiency. Monitors flickered softly along the production walls, each tracking metrics, alerts, outputs. At NovaTech's new production operations center, everything was supposed to run smoother than ever. AI modules processed sensor data in real time. Robotics lines responded within milliseconds. The future was seamless. Until it wasn't. Something's off, Naomi said, stepping into my office without knocking. I looked up. Her face was taut, pale. Not like her. Define off. Error flags in product testing. 3 batches failed verification in the last hour. I was already out of my seat. Downstairs, Isaiah had the diagnostic screen pulled up, graphs swaying like a heartbeat in crisis. It's not a sensor issue, he said. The code itself is behaving oddly. as if someone rewrote part of the testing algorithm, but did it carelessly. Can the AI self-modify that deeply? I asked. Isaiah shook his head. Not without administrative override. Naomi joined us, her voice low and furious. We checked access logs. Someone logged in remotely at 2:43 a.m., changed 2 key parameters in the testing module. My stomach tightened. Whose credentials? She hesitated. Charles. The silence that followed wasn't disbelief. It was confirmation. Somehow, I already knew. He claimed he couldn't even use the interface, I muttered. Wouldn't touch a keyboard. He didn't, Isaiah said, but he knew how to call someone who could. Brandon arrived not long after, face pale. I checked the internal security logs myself, he said, handing me a tablet. It was Dad's credentials, twice. One last week, one last night. I didn't ask why he was checking. I already knew that too. The conference room was full by the time we summoned him. Engineers, managers, floor staff. Even Naomi's usually poised expression was steel. Charles walked in like he still owned the place. What's this about? I didn't answer right away. I handed him the tablet, watched his eyes skim the screen, watched the color drain. You accessed restricted system modules, I said. Twice. Once under your login, once under Brandon's workstation ID, from your floor. He opened his mouth, then shut it. I just wanted to make sure the system wasn't doing too much, he muttered. Someone needs to remember the human side of all this. I built things with my hands for 30 years. So you tried to crash a learning system during a live production cycle? Naomi's voice was sharp. That nearly cost us the Michigan client. We had to pause shipping. Charles flinched, then straightened. I wanted them to remember who built this industry. I wanted them to remember it wasn't code. It was us. The men who stood on the floor and this company doesn't sabotage its own future to preserve someone's pride. The words came out of me before I could soften them. I didn't try to. There was nothing left to protect. Charles's face twisted. Anger, shame, something sour and old. But he didn't argue again. I turned to the staff. Effective immediately, Charles Carter is dismissed from NovaTech. His access is revoked. Security will escort him out. No applause. No drama. Just a brutal silence as a legacy ended in a room full of engineers. He didn't look at me as he walked out. Brandon stayed behind. I found him standing in the hallway 10 minutes later, hands in his pockets. He lives with me, you know, he said quietly as I passed. I paused. I didn't. He looked away. He doesn't sleep much, keeps talking about how it used to be. I nodded, not sure what else to say. Back in my office, I opened the system logs again. Naomi had preserved every line, every access point, every breach. I copied them to an encrypted drive and sent the file to the board. It was no longer about family. It was about the future. I wasn't just speaking for me. I was speaking for everyone who was told to stay small. The lights were dim just enough to give the stage its weight. 200 NovaTech employees sat shoulder to shoulder in the company hall, their eyes fixed on the podium. Some leaned forward. Others crossed arms tightly, unsure of what was about to come. All of them were waiting. I stood backstage, hands cold despite the warm March air that filtered through the side vents. Naomi tapped her tablet once more, checking the live stream connection. Equinox is in, she whispered. Langston's watching. I nodded. You don't have to carry it all, she said softly. But I did, and I would. I stepped onto the stage, my heels clicking once on the polished wood. The company logo glowed behind me. Clean, strong, and nothing like the crest that used to hang in Carter's boardroom. My name is Madeline Carter, I began, voice steady. But I'm not here to talk about my name. There was a quiet intake of breath across the room. Naomi stood at the side, unmoving. Brandon, seated in the front row, looked up with an unreadable expression. 1 week ago, I continued, This company faced its first internal crisis. Production lines crashed, client schedules were disrupted, and trust was tested. I didn't hide from it. I let the truth walk with me. After an internal investigation, we confirmed the source of the breach. It was an account registered to Charles Carter, a former executive of this company, and my father. Gasps moved like a ripple through the hall. I didn't flinch. I'm not here to assign blame. I'm here to tell a story, I said, letting the weight of each word sink in. 3 years ago, I walked into a meeting room expecting to present a proposal. Instead, I was asked to sign away my shares, my position, and any belief that my ideas mattered. I left with nothing, I said, letting silence stretch for just a moment. Except the idea itself. And that idea, rejected, dismissed, and sabotaged, became the seed of NovaTech. Naomi tilted her head. She'd heard the speech rehearsed, but this wasn't just a statement anymore. It was alive now. Some of us are told we're too young, too soft-spoken, too ambitious, or too inconvenient. Some of us are pushed out because we refuse to fit old molds. I want to say, today that I see you. I saw Isaiah in the third row, jaw tight. Naomi's fingers curled around the edge of her tablet. And Brandon didn't look away. This company wasn't built to fight the past, I said. It was built to learn from it, evolve beyond it, and prove that integrity and vision are not mutually exclusive. I looked straight at the camera. To every partner, investor, and employee who's wondering if NovaTech can weather sabotage, I say, yes. Because this wasn't a company built by one name. It was built by many hands. Hands that were told to stay small. My voice didn't waver. We don't ask for seats at old tables, I said, letting the line land. We build new ones. The silence broke like glass. Applause erupted, rolling forward like thunder in a canyon. Not polite, not rehearsed. Real. Backstage, Naomi whispered into her mic. We're viral. Internal clips are already circulating. By the time I stepped off the stage, my phone buzzed. Langston, I answered. I was wrong, he said without introduction. Nova's not just viable, it's necessary. Let's move forward. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. We're ready. I turned. Brandon was waiting at the edge of the curtain, holding a slim folder in both hands. This is everything Dad tried to hide, he said. Documents, contacts, his backup plan if Nova collapsed. I think you should see it. I took the file, heavy despite its size. Later that evening, Naomi walked into my office with a frame. Inside, printed in bold ink on cream paper, was the last line of my speech. We don't ask for seats at old tables. We build new ones. Some endings deserve silence. Others deserve shredders. The sunlight poured through the glass walls like liquid gold, softening the edges of chrome fixtures and smooth surfaces in my office. It was June, and the air smelled of fresh paper, ink, and the kind of quiet that comes after a storm has passed. For good. On the desk before me sat 2 items, a faded letter I never mailed and the ID badge I'd refused to throw away. Contract's here, Naomi announced as she stepped in, eyes shining. Final copy. We're officially public. I nodded once, hands steady. Ethan entered next, carrying a small bottle of champagne. His grin was boyish, but his eyes were clear with years of weight lifted. Brandon trailed in behind them, the last to enter, notebook tucked under his arm like always. I looked down at the contract. Initial public offering. NovaTech Inc., valuation, $2.8 billion. All legal names in place. All signatures blank. Shall we? Ethan asked. The pen clicked once in my fingers. I signed. The first signature as a public CEO. Naomi exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for a year. Brandon's lips twitched into the smallest smile. Pride tempered by something softer. I wasn't sure it was forgiveness, but it was close enough. I saved something for today, I said, reaching into my desk drawer. The old Carter Industries ID badge still bore the scratches from my purse lining. And the letter to my grandfather. Never folded, never stained, but aged by its own irrelevance. I'd written it the night I was removed from the company, pouring out grief and fury onto the page, only to never send it. There was a knock. The reporter from Forbes entered quietly, his recorder already blinking red. "Congratulations, Ms. Carter," or should I say Ms. Reyes Carter? "Madeline is fine," I replied. He took a seat, scanning notes. "Let's start with a question off the record," he said. "If Charles Carter were in this room right now, what would you say to him?" Silence bloomed in the room like a second sun. I didn't answer. Instead, I stood, picked up the ID badge, and crossed the room to the shredder by the wall. Its whir began low and soft. I dropped the badge in. Plastic and history fed into steel teeth. Gone. "No comment," I said, walking back. The interview continued, polite and efficient. Questions about growth, vision, culture. Naomi answered a few. Brandon chimed in about R&D expansion. Ethan offered something about legacy clients. But when the reporter asked, "What's next for Nova?" they all turned to me. I walked to the window. Across the skyline, the old Carter Industries tower glinted in the sun, but the sign now read, Nova Innovation Lab. "Legacy isn't inherited," I said quietly. "It's earned." I turned back to my team. The reporter had packed up. Naomi was already coordinating the press release on her phone. Ethan poured 2 fingers of champagne into 4 glasses. Brandon hovered like he didn't know where to stand. When the office cleared, Ethan stayed behind. "So," he said, leaning on the doorframe. "What now?" I looked out the window one more time, letting the view settle. "Now," I said, smiling, "we build something that outlives us all." The sound of the shredder lingered longer than it should have, like a final breath let go after years of holding it in. I didn't flinch when the plastic fragments of the old Carter ID card disappeared into the blades. I thought maybe I would. Maybe I'd feel something. Regret, pity, even relief. But instead, there was just stillness. Not silence, but a kind of stillness I hadn't known in years. A stillness that came when you realized the fight was over. Not because they surrendered, but because you no longer needed their recognition. I stood by the window, watching the city pulse beneath me. Chicago had always felt indifferent to me. Gray, fast, unforgiving. But that morning, with sunlight cascading off glass buildings and the wind dancing just right along the skyline, it felt alive, like it was bearing witness. The Carter building across from me looked smaller now. Not physically, of course, but stripped of the name, stripped of the legacy they clung to so desperately. It had become a shell. The new sign read, Nova Innovation Lab. Clean. Simple. Ironic, even. The future they tried to crush now stood taller than anything they ever built. Ethan knocked once before entering, coffee in hand. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at the shredder, then at me. "You good?" he asked softly. "I am," I replied, more to myself than to him. Naomi followed, holding a small frame wrapped in brown paper. She handed it to me, her eyes a little too glassy. "You should put this on the wall." I unwrapped it. My words, spoken weeks ago, now in ink and glass. We don't ask for seats at old tables. We build new ones. For a moment, I let myself remember my grandfather, the first man who ever believed I could lead, long before I even believed it. I had once written him a letter, full of hopes, doubts, and the promise that I'd try to carry the family forward with integrity. I never sent it. Today, it sat quietly next to the shreddered ID. I picked it up, looked at it one last time, and placed it in the locked drawer of my desk. Not out of sentiment, but out of closure. Brandon stopped by before the IPO ceremony. He looked different, not just in posture or dress, but in energy. Lighter. He handed me a USB stick. "Dad kept secrets, but I don't want to. This has everything. Emails, plans. Stuff I think you should have. I nodded, placed it beside the contract papers. Thank you. He started to walk out, then paused. I don't think I ever said I was sorry. You didn't, I said, meeting his eyes. But you showed up when it counted. Then came the ceremony, the signing, the quiet cheers, the reporter, the inevitable question. If Charles Carter were in this room, what would you say? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Some stories don't end with a bang. They end with the calm that comes after the storm. For Madeline Carter, justice didn't look like revenge. It looked like standing firm while the past unraveled around her. What she built wasn't just a company. It was a testament to the power of truth, of resilience, and of choosing to rise when the world hands you ashes. She never shouted her triumph. She didn't need to. In a world that often rewards volume over value, her quiet defiance was the loudest thing in the room. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates deeply once it's heard. Some wounds don't fade, but they transform. They become the map we follow toward something better. No empire built on betrayal can survive the weight of a single, unshakable truth. Thank you for staying through the end of Madeline Carter's story. If you're still here, after everything that unfolded, the betrayal in that boardroom, the forced signature, the calculated silence, and finally the quiet act of rising, not for revenge, but because there was nothing left worth bowing to, then you're more than just a viewer. You understand? Because this isn't just the story of a woman being removed from the very project she built. It's the story of anyone who was ever pushed aside so someone else could shine. Anyone who's been told they're too young, too soft-spoken, too different, or not a fit for the family brand. Even when they were the most capable person in the room. Madeline Carter was quiet. But quiet never meant weak. She didn't scream when they took her seat. She didn't rage when they handed her a pen to erase herself. She just walked out and rebuilt. Line by line, code by code, night after night. Until one day, her signature wasn't on a transfer form. It was on the IPO of her own company. She didn't ask for a seat at the table. She built a new one. If you've ever felt overlooked, silenced, or stripped of opportunity because you weren't the golden child, the heir, the safe bet, know this. You are not alone. You don't have to shout to be heard. Sometimes the quietest victory is the most powerful one. Drop a comment below so we know where you are in your own journey. Comment 1 if you were ever pushed out of something you helped build, just because they thought you wouldn't fight back. Comment 2 if you're rebuilding now, on your own terms, with your own voice, and in your own time. We read everything, and every comment you leave is a signal to someone else watching. You're not alone in this. This channel exists to tell stories like this. Not stories of loud revenge, but of quiet return, of walking out of rooms that tried to break you, and into the light you built yourself. Thank you for being here. We'll be telling more stories like Madeline Carter's, because even late recognition is better than never. And the most beautiful form of justice is delivered by those who never needed to scream to be believed. We'll see you in the next story. This time, you won't be left outside the room. You can wear our name, Lauren, but names don't rewrite blood. You were an outsider the day Nathaniel married you, and a stain we never managed to wash off. That's what Margaret said to me, right there at the dinner table. Crystal glasses full, candles lit, and not a single soul brave enough to speak up. If you've ever been treated like a placeholder in someone else's legacy, if you've ever swallowed your voice just to keep the peace, stay with me. Because this story, it's not just mine. It's yours too. It was early April, and the morning light outside barely cracked through the overcast sky. That sort of pale gray that didn't really feel like morning. It just hovered, pressing down like the weight of an unspoken truth. In the kitchen, the kettle hissed as it finished boiling, and I poured hot water into 2 mugs. One for me, one for Ethan. He was already awake, sitting at the kitchen island in his pajama pants and one of Nate's old t-shirts. His fingers were busy folding napkins into neat triangles, lining them up with the precision no 13-year-old should have. He didn't look up when I set his mug down. "Thanks," he murmured. I watched him for a moment, then sat across from him. We both blew on our tea, steam curling between us like a wall that neither of us wanted to break yet. It had been like this the last few days. Quiet, careful. There was something in the air, something